In the heart of the galactic consensus, on the shimmering world of Silthera, there existed a chamber known as the calculus of outcomes. Here, the Veln, a species of elegant, crystalline beings whose very biology was intertwined with probability matrices, charted the fate of civilizations. They saw the universe not in stars and planets, but in cascading fractals of possibility. To them, every war, every first contact, every existential threat was a solvable equation. And today, the equation was humanity. The human confederacy, a plucky, upstart species barely 2 centuries into the stellar community, had made a grievous error. They had colonized a world in the path of gleaming, a sacred migratory route for the Drathkal, a species of immense, spacefaring behemoths whose passage was considered a galactic holy event. The Drathkal did not negotiate. They did not alter course. They consumed. The consensus had ruled. Humanity must evacuate the planet, Zephyria Prime, within 1 lunar cycle, or be erased as a nuisance. Ambassador Kalen, a Veln whose body shimmered with calm, blue certainty, addressed the human diplomat in the sterile meeting chamber. Kalen, voice like chiming glass, the scenario has been modeled. Your military assets against the Drathkal bioships. A 0.003% probability of successful defense. A 99.997% probability of total annihilation. The path of wisdom is clear. Abandon your colony. This is not malice. This is mathematics. The human diplomat, an older woman named Alara Vance with graying hair and eyes that held the weight of Earth's long history, simply listened. She saw not equations, but the faces of 4 million settlers on Zephyria, farmers, engineers, children who called that rust-colored world home. Alara, calm, steady, we hear your calculations, Ambassador, but there are variables your matrices may not account for. Kalen, there are no unaccounted variables. We have factored your energy output, weapon yields, tactical predictability, psychological propensity for self-preservation over sacrifice. The path is set. The Veln's diagnosis spread through the consensus. Another young species would learn the hard, logical laws of the cosmos. The story was already written. The humans just hadn't read the final page. The galactic media networks flocked to Zephyria Prime. It was to be a somber spectacle, a live broadcast lesson in cosmic humility. They showed the human colonists, frail, soft-skinned beings, frantically working, but not on evacuation ships. They were digging. They were building strange, non-energy-based structures, great parabolic dishes of simple steel, vast grids of copper wire laid across canyons, towering kinetic launch rails pointed not at the sky, but at the horizon. The Veln analysts observed, their crystalline forms flickering with mild confusion. Kalen, to a subordinate, irrational. They are constructing primitive resonant dampeners and kinetic accelerators. Power output is negligible. It is noise, a 100% probability of irrelevance. The Drathkal entered the system. They were living world ships, each the size of a continent, their hides crusted with asteroid rock and ancient ice. Their passage vibrated through the fabric of space itself, a deep, subsonic dirge that shook the bones of the planet. They moved with the inevitable, terrible grace of glaciers. Their great maws, capable of swallowing cities, began to glow with a voracious bioplasma. On the networks, alien commentators spoke in hushed, pitying tones. Alien commentator, voiceover, observed the human settlements. They have gathered in their largest population center. It appears to be a final, futile act of communal solace. The Drathkal will reach optimal consumption range in 7 planetary rotations. The galaxy watched, expecting prayers, panic, or last-minute surrender. They did not expect the music. It began softly at first, beneath the Drathkal's dirge. A deep, resonant hum, not from engines, but from the planet itself. It was the sound of the colossal steel dishes, vibrating in precise, carefully calculated harmony. Then came the beat, a rhythmic, planet-shaking thump from the kinetic launch rails, firing precisely weighted tungsten blocks into deep, pre-bored caverns, creating a seismic percussion. And then the melody. Across Zephyria Prime, from thousands of speaker arrays hooked to those copper grids, a sound erupted. It was complex, layered, utterly alien to the listening galaxy. It had the soaring strings of 1,000 violins synthesized from atmospheric plasma, the defiant blast of brass shaped by shaped magnetic fields, the voice of 1,000,000 humans singing a wordless, heroic chorus, amplified through the planet's own magnetosphere. Alara Vance stood in the central control hub, a simple headset on her ears, her hands moving across a tactile interface not of weapon controls, but of a conductor's podium. Elara, cue the Jupiter movement. Full planetary resonance. Let them hear what we are. What the humans had built wasn't a weapon. It was the single largest, most powerful musical instrument ever conceived, a planetophone. They hadn't tried to match the Drathkal's physical might. They targeted something else entirely, their biology. The Drathkal's dirge faltered. The great behemoths, creatures who communicated through gravitational waves and complex chemical songs, whose migration was a slow, sacred symphony across the eons, shuddered. The human music, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, arranged for a planet, washed over them. It was not noise. It was a conversation, a language of emotion written in sound waves and seismic vibration. The music spoke of terrible struggle. It spoke of profound joy. It whispered of quiet sorrow, and then erupted into an ode to universal brotherhood. A Freude, Schoner Götterfunken, played with the force of a world's heart. The lead Drathkal's bioplasma glow dimmed. It began to alter its course, not away from the planet, but into a graceful, slow orbit. Its great head tilted, listening. The other behemoths followed. From their bodies emerged new sounds, deep, questioning, resonant pulses that harmonized with, rather than drowned out, the human symphony. In the observation spire above Silthera, Ambassador Kalen watched the sensor data. His crystalline form, once a steady blue, was flickering through a frantic rainbow of confusion. The probability matrices in his mind's eye shattered, unable to compute. Victory was not supposed to sound like this. It was not supposed to be beautiful. Kalen, they are not fighting. They are communicating. At a bioempathetic level we deemed impossible for a presynaptic species. Our models only accounted for conflict. We calculated their capacity for destruction. We never calculated their capacity for art. On Zephyria, the music swelled to its finale. The human chorus, backed by the planet's own geological voice, sang out. The Drathkal responded, their own ancient song intertwining with humanity's, creating a new, hybrid symphony that echoed across the system. The behemoths settled into a stable, non-consuming orbit, their destructive maws now closed, simply listening. The galactic networks were silent. Then they erupted not in analysis, but in awe. They had come to witness an extinction, and instead witnessed a first contact, deeper than any treaty signing. Elara Vance, sweat on her brow but a smile on her face, opened a channel to the Velen. Elara, Ambassador Kalen, your mathematics were correct. We had a 0.003% chance of victory, if victory meant destruction. You forgot to factor in one variable. Kalen, what variable was that, Diplomat Vance? Elara, that for humanity the most powerful reason to fight is to preserve the chance to create, to sing, to build, to make something beautiful that wasn't there before. You calculated our rage, our fear. You never calculated our symphony. The Velen's calculus of outcomes was forever changed. A new branch of probability was added, the human variable, the X-factor of irrational creation. The Drathkal became permanent, peaceful neighbors to Zephyria Prime, their ancient song now forever enriched by a movement called humanity. The galaxy learned that day that to judge a species only by its claws is to be deaf to its soul. Humans were not the strongest, nor the oldest, nor the most logical, but they were the composers. When faced with annihilation, they did not just build a shield, they wrote a song so powerful it turned monsters into patrons. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human.